Real CreepyPasta Paranormal. Haunting Truth Behind the Old Spaghetti Factory in Vancouver, Canada. Chapter 1. Arrival. The gray clouds hung ominously over Vancouver as the team of investigators pulled up outside the old spaghetti factory, casting the restaurant's vintage facade in a moody light. The soft murmur of the nearby waterfront added an unsettling soundtrack to their arrival. Harrison, the skeptic of the group, glanced at the establishment and chuckled. "You really believe we're going to find something in a place that serves spaghetti?" Helena, their historian, shot him a look. "Every building has its stories, Harrison. And this one," she pointed at the restaurant, "has more than its fair share. It's not about the spaghetti. It's about the souls that once graced these halls." Ricardo, the tech specialist, was busy adjusting the dials and switches on his equipment, ensuring everything was calibrated. "Whether it's ghostly apparitions or faulty wiring, we'll get to the bottom of it." Emerging from the car last was Alara, their psychic, her head tilted slightly as if listening to the whispers of the wind. Her fingers brushed against the amulet around her neck, and her expression grew distant. "There's an energy here," she murmured, her voice filled with a mixture of anticipation and dread. The entrance to the old spaghetti factory was framed with worn-out bricks and a sign showcasing its iconic logo. As the group made their way in, the door gave an eerie creak. The restaurant was quiet, with the staff having closed it for the day to accommodate the investigation. The restaurant's manager, a woman named Loretta, approached them, her eyes revealing sleepless nights. "Thank you for coming. I didn't know where else to turn. These incidents have been bad for business." Helena offered a comforting smile. "We'll do our best to help you understand what's happening." Loretta nodded. It started off innocently enough. Little things, like a chair being out of place or a faint child's laughter when no child was around. But then it escalated. Plates flying off tables, unseen hands touching the staff, and patrons claiming they saw figures in period clothing disappearing around corners. Harrison rolled his eyes. Probably just a prank or the wind. Alara, however, had wandered off towards the old trolley car stationed inside the dining area, her hands grazing the aged wood. This is where it's strongest," she whispered. The temperature around the trolley seemed to drop instantly, sending shivers down everyone's spines. Ricardo, adjusting his thermal camera, noted, "There's definitely a cold spot here." He pointed the device towards the trolley, the screen showing a stark contrast in temperature. Alara's fingers brushed against the seat, her eyes closing momentarily. "There's a spirit attached to this trolley. A conductor, perhaps? He's not malevolent, but he's trapped, longing for something." Helena, ever the historian, interjected, "This trolley car has been a part of the restaurant for decades. Many believe it's haunted by a conductor from its operational days." As the group continued their walkthrough, Helena began recounting the building's past. Before it was the old spaghetti factory, this building served various purposes. There have been accidents, untimely deaths, and perhaps even a murder or two throughout its long history. Ricardo began placing cameras and EVP devices strategically around the restaurant. Every corner, every shadowy nook was covered. "We'll capture anything that moves tonight," he declared with confidence. The team gathered at their base station, a corner table equipped with monitors, headphones, and various pieces of ghost hunting equipment. Alara seemed lost in thought, her fingers continuously brushing her amulet. Harrison, still the skeptic, remarked, "Let's get this over with." A night in a spaghetti restaurant? What's the worst that could happen? But as darkness descended, enveloping the restaurant in an impenetrable shroud, the atmosphere shifted. The whispering winds outside grew louder, and the soft clinking sounds from within the restaurant echoed eerily. The team's breaths became visible in the chilling air. The clock struck midnight, marking the beginning of their first night stakeout. Every monitor flickered to life, displaying grainy images of the restaurant's interior. Each sound was amplified, from the distant rustle of the trees to the soft hum of the equipment. Alara's voice, barely a whisper, broke the silence. "They're here, and they're waiting." The night was young, and the true test had just begun. The team braced themselves, not for what they knew, but for what was lurking in the shadows of the unknown. Chapter 2. The first contact silence blanketed the interior of the old spaghetti factory. The only sounds to be heard were the soft whirs and hums of Ricardo's equipment. Harrison adjusted in his seat, a smirk playing on his lips as he glanced at the monitors. "You know, I've been to creepier places than this." Helena leaned over. A collection of aged, yellowed newspaper clippings spread before her. "Don't be too hasty in your judgment," she warned, her voice dripping with a mix of anticipation and foreboding. "History has a way of surprising us when we least expect it." Ricardo's attention was fixed on his laptop screen, displaying readouts from the various devices. Suddenly, a series of beeps caught his attention. "That's strange," he muttered, noticing the equipment set up near the trolley car had started malfunctioning. The signals were erratic, alternating between static and brief spikes. "What's happening?" Alara inquired, her gaze following Ricardo's. He frowned. "I don't know. It shouldn't be doing that." As he pondered, a distinct sound shattered the stillness: footsteps. Soft, deliberate, echoing through the vast emptiness of the restaurant. Every pair of eyes turned towards the source, but the room appeared devoid of any presence. The footsteps meandered, aimlessly wandering the floor, growing louder and then fading, like a memory reluctantly fading into oblivion. Helena, ever the historian, gathered her notes. "I think you all should know about the tram conductor." She pulled a particularly worn clipping to the forefront, pointing to an old black and white photo of a man in a conductor's uniform, standing proudly beside the very trolley car that sat within the restaurant. "This," she began, "is Edward Mason." Clearing her throat, she continued, "In the late 1920s, Edward was the conductor of trolley car number 53. The trolley was his life. He was known to take extra shifts and was often the last to leave. But tragedy struck one fateful night. Ricardo, trying to fix the malfunctioning equipment, paused to listen. Alara's face had gone ashen, and even Harrison's skepticism had taken a backseat to curiosity. Helena's voice wavered with emotion. Edward was found dead on the trolley tracks one evening, with the car nearby. It was ruled an accident, but whispers of foul play were rampant. Many believed his spirit never left, forever attached to the trolley he loved so dearly. The room grew colder, the weight of history pressing down upon them. Alara, her senses heightened, tried to pierce the veil between worlds. Concentrating on the trolley's energy, she softly whispered, "Edward Mason, are you here with us?" A tense silence followed. The equipment buzzed and beeped, but it was a faint, almost inaudible whisper that caught everyone's attention. It was a voice, fragile and distant, like a breeze rustling leaves. Waiting. Alara's eyes widened, and she gripped the table. He's here. He's trying to communicate. Harrison leaned forward, intrigued despite himself. Ask him what he's waiting for. Before Alara could utter a word, a shadow moved across one of the monitors. Everyone's gaze snapped to the screen. It displayed the area around the trolley. For a split second, a shadowy figure, donned in a conductor's uniform, manifested beside the trolley car. It stood there, still as a statue, before vanishing as quickly as it appeared. Ricardo jumped to his feet. Did you see that? He rewound the footage, playing it back. The shadowy figure reappeared, its presence undeniable. Alara took a deep breath, her connection with the other side deepening. Edward, what are you waiting for? What's keeping you here? The room was silent once more, the heavy weight of anticipation choking the air. The whisper returned, clearer this time. Lost. Ticket. Helena quickly scanned her notes, piecing the puzzle together. The night he died, there was a mention of a missing ticket. Some said it was a ticket Edward had kept as a memento, a reminder of his first day as a conductor. It was never found after his death. The group exchanged glances, realization dawning on them. Was Edward's spirit tethered to this realm, searching eternally for his treasured ticket? The footsteps resumed, drawing nearer, growing louder, echoing Edward's unending search. The air grew colder, breaths turned visible, and the spectral figure of Edward Mason seemed more present than ever, silently beseeching the living for the resolution he had been denied in death. The evening was still young, but the investigators knew one thing for certain: they had made their first contact. And the spirits of the old spaghetti factory had stories they were eager to share. Chapter 3. Boyish mischief. As dawn broke, the golden tendrils of light seeped into the old spaghetti factory, shattering the eerie ambiance that had settled the previous night. However, despite the comforting rays of morning, a sense of unease lingered. The team sat around a makeshift camp they'd set up in one of the dining areas. Ricardo, bags evident under his eyes, was the first to speak as he presented a collection of cutlery neatly arranged in a peculiar pattern on a tray. These, he began, a hint of anxiety in his voice, were scattered all around the trolley when I woke up this morning. They weren't like this when we left last night. Harrison, ever the skeptic, raised an eyebrow. Could have been one of us? Sleepwalking, perhaps? Alara shook her head, her fingers delicately brushing over the oddly arranged objects. No. I've felt it since we arrived, but now it's clearer, a playful, mischievous energy, much like a child. As if on cue, Helena clicked on a video file on her laptop. The footage showed the dining area in the dead of night. For a few minutes, nothing seemed out of place. But then, a fleeting shadow passed by the trolley. It was brief, almost imperceptible, but on pausing and enhancing the image, the silhouette of a small figure with tousled red hair became vaguely discernible. There, Helena pointed. The little red-haired boy we heard tales about. I believe he's behind this playful mischief. Alara closed her eyes momentarily, her senses extending, trying to connect. Soft, joyous laughter echoed in her mind, a child's innocent delight. He's here, she whispered, her eyes moist. He's lost, but he finds solace in play. A series of clatters suddenly interrupted the debriefing. The team whirled around to find a chair near the trolley rocking back and forth of its own accord. The air grew cool, the sunlight dimming momentarily as the ghostly laughter of a child echoed throughout the restaurant. Ricardo scrambled to his equipment, his face pale. This activity in broad daylight, it's unprecedented. He watched his monitors closely, heart pounding. Most spirits are confined to the shroud of night. But he's powerful. Harrison frowned, skepticism replaced with concern. Why is he still here? What does he want? Helena, rifling through her research notes, said, legends mention a small boy playing around the trolley, often leaving a trail of mischief. But nothing speaks of his history or why he might be tethered here. Alara, deep in her psychic trance, spoke softly, almost in a whisper, a toy. He's searching for a toy, something precious to him. Objects on a nearby table started to levitate. A plate, a fork, a napkin, each dancing in the air before settling down. The energy in the room was palpable, charged with a curious blend of joy and sorrow. Ricardo, usually immersed in logic and machinery, rubbed his temples. I have to admit, this is getting to me. Seeing objects move, hearing stories is one thing. But experiencing it firsthand, especially in daylight, it's unnerving. Alara approached him, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. We must remember, these souls, especially this child, aren't here to harm. They're trapped between realms, reliving memories, or searching for something they lost. We need to help him, Helena said determinedly. If it's a toy he seeks, we must find it. The day progressed with the team splitting up to search the premises. Every corner, every nook and cranny, was explored, hoping to find some remnant, some toy, that might bring solace to the playful spirit. As evening approached, and with no tangible lead on the toy, the team regrouped. The restaurant, bathed in the golden hue of the setting sun, seemed peaceful. But the investigators knew that with nightfall, the spirits would rise, and their quest to understand and aid them had only just begun. Chapter 4. The white mortar, the twilight hues that once draped the old spaghetti factory gave way to the inky blue of night. The restaurant, which bustled with cheerfulness during the day, morphed into a cavern of eerie silences and echoing footsteps at night. With the fall of evening, the team found itself back at its makeshift camp, ready for another night of investigation. Alara, always sensitive to the energies around her, was the first to notice. She felt a distinct drop in temperature, a chill that nipped at her skin. There's a cold spot, she murmured, her eyes fixated on a spot near the washrooms. It's strong and very focused. Helena, ever curious and with her historian's thirst for knowledge, leaned forward. This might be related to the lady we've heard about, the one they say roams these halls. The one draped in white. The soft, melancholic tune of humming caressed their ears, a tune so soft and full of pain that it gripped their hearts. Drawn as if by an invisible string, the team found themselves following the source of the sound. The humming grew louder as they neared the washrooms, but when they pushed open the doors, the sound ceased abruptly, replaced by an unsettling silence. Harrison, always with a comment at hand, whispered, "It's like she knew we were coming and didn't want to be found." Helena, her fingers tracing the contours of an old photograph she'd found in her research, spoke up. Legend has it that she's been sighted wandering the restaurant, mainly around these washrooms. There's a heartbreaking tale that suggests she might be searching for her lost child. Alara's eyes widened in realization. The red-haired boy, Ricardo, fiddling with his tech equipment, nodded in agreement. It's beginning to make sense. The playful boy and the mournful lady, perhaps they're connected. The silence in the washroom was abruptly shattered by Alara's sharp intake of breath. Her body went rigid, eyes clouded as if peering into a world unseen to the others. She was in the throes of a vision. A woman, distressed, tearing through rooms, searching, calling out for someone. Her voice is raw, filled with despair. Alara narrated, her voice trembling with the emotions she felt from the vision. She keeps repeating a name. Jamie. She's looking for Jamie. As the vision receded, Alara slumped, supported by Harrison. Helena's eyes were wide with realization. Jamie. ... Could it be the name of the red-haired boy? The team pondered over this connection when Ricardo, having stayed relatively silent, pointed towards one of the ornate mirrors in the washroom. For a split second, the reflection of a woman draped in white, her face etched with pain and eyes brimming with tears, stared back at them. And then, as suddenly as she appeared, she vanished. Harrison, the skepticism from his first day all but gone, whispered, "We've made contact with two spirits now. A boy full of mischief and a woman full of sorrow." Alara, regaining her composure, nodded, and they are connected. We need to find Jamie's toy and maybe, just maybe, we can give them both some peace. The night deepened, and the team, fortified by their new discoveries, set about with renewed determination. If the legends held even a sliver of truth, there were souls in pain within these walls, and the team was resolved to help, to mend what was broken, and to tell the tales that these spirits so desperately wanted to be heard. Chapter 5. Unearthed ties. The old spaghetti factory's walls seemed to thrum with hidden stories, narratives buried in the depths of time. Helena, with an old book sprawled open on the table and a pile of aged photos and newspaper clippings beside her, was fervently digging into the past. These photographs, they're from the early 1900s, all taken around the tram lines, she murmured, passing some black and white photos to the team. Alara leaned in closer, her psychic sensitivity making her fingers tingle as she touched them. One image was particularly haunting. A young boy with bright red hair, standing beside a tram, a woman, possibly in her 30s, with a stark white dress, her arm protectively wrapped around the boy. "That's him," Alara whispered. "And her, the lady in white. I'm sure of it." Helena carefully unfolded a brittle newspaper clipping, the faded text still legible. "Listen to this," she began, her voice tinged with sadness. "Tragedy on the tracks. Mother and son meet a gruesome end at the local tram station. Eyewitnesses say it was a mere accident, a momentary distraction leading to a fatal misstep. Ricardo, who had been calibrating his equipment, looked up, concern evident in his eyes. Could it be them? Could this be the story of our ghosts?" Alara nodded, her voice barely a whisper. She's in mourning, forever searching for her son, reliving that tragic moment. Harrison, ever the skeptic, interjected, "Hold on a minute. It's a tragic story, yes, but how can we be sure these are our ghosts? There were probably numerous accidents back in the day." Helena responded, "It's the timing, the location, the descriptions. Everything matches up." Harrison frowned. ever keen on looking for a logical explanation. Old buildings creak. Temperatures fluctuate. Stories grow and evolve over time, becoming legends. And legends, well, they can sometimes just be stories. Alara, clearly exasperated, countered, "Harrison, I've felt them. Their pain, their yearning. I've seen visions, heard their voices." "I'm just saying," Harrison began, trying to tread carefully, "that we shouldn't jump to conclusions. We need solid proof." As the night deepened, the ambiance within the restaurant became palpably intense. The earlier debate seemed to stir the energies even more. Ricardo's equipment started whirring and beeping, lights flashing in a rapid sequence. "There's a significant energy spike. Everything's off the charts. And it's all centralized around the trolley car," he exclaimed, pointing to the monitors. Helena, clutching the old photo of the boy and the lady, ventured closer to the trolley, Alara by her side. As they neared, they felt an icy cold draft envelop them. Suddenly, a faint sound echoed throughout the restaurant, the distant, melancholic hum of a woman, accompanied by the soft, innocent laughter of a child. The chilling duet was hauntingly beautiful. "Tell me again how that's just the building creaking, Harrison," Ricardo muttered, goosebumps evident on his skin. Harrison, for the first time, seemed lost for words. He swallowed hard, looking around, trying to find a logical explanation, but coming up short. Alara, tears forming in her eyes, whispered, "They're here, trying to communicate, trying to tell their story." The team stood still, taking in the moment. The mother and son, bound by a tragic fate and a timeless love, echoed through the hallways of the old spaghetti factory. The past had intertwined with the present, and their unearthed ties were now begging to be acknowledged and understood. And as dawn began to cast its first light, the team knew one thing for certain: their work here was far from done. Chapter 6. Voices of the Past. The main dining area of the old spaghetti factory had seen countless gatherings, celebrations, and conversations over the years. But tonight, it was witnessing something vastly different, a séance aimed at connecting with the souls that lingered in its corners. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation as the team gathered around a large wooden table, its polished surface reflecting the soft flicker of the candlelight. Alara, with her hands resting gently on the table, began to guide the group, her voice soft yet commanding. "Let us join our energies and open ourselves to the spirits that dwell here. We mean no harm. We seek only understanding," she intoned. The candle's flames seemed to dance a bit more erratically as the air grew colder. Helena felt a tingling sensation run up her spine, while Harrison, the ever-pragmatic skeptic, continuously darted his eyes around the room, expecting a logical explanation for every shift and creak. It was Ricardo who first noticed something unusual. His headphones, linked to the EVP recorder, picked up faint murmurs. Adjusting the volume, he strained to understand the whispers from beyond. He jotted down words as they emerged from the ethereal static: "Stay. Pain. Save him. Be careful." Alara, deeply in her trance, began to speak in a voice not entirely her own, softer, tinged with a sadness that penetrated the heart of every listener. "Why did it happen? My boy. My precious boy." Tears streamed down her face as she continued, clearly channeling the energy of the lady in white. "He was too young. It wasn't his time. I tried to save him. I failed. Quote. As Alara spoke, a gust of wind blew through the room, extinguishing the candles. A sudden darkness enveloped them all. The temperature dropped even more, causing everyone to shiver. Ricardo, attempting to restart a piece of equipment that had suddenly gone dead, felt a distinct pressure on his wrist, as if unseen hands were trying to interfere or perhaps communicate with him. Harrison, having always leaned on science and reason, was finding it hard to process what was transpiring before him. The pleas and warnings captured on EVP, the raw emotion emanating from Alara, and now Ricardo's inexplicable experience, it was beginning to crack the sturdy armor of his skepticism. There must be an explanation, he muttered to himself. But deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted. Helena, placing a reassuring hand on Alara's shoulder, whispered, "We hear you. We want to help. Please, tell us your story." Alara, still channeling the lady in white, spoke of love and loss, of a fateful day that forever changed the course of two souls. The tale was heartbreaking, a tale of a mother's desperate attempt to save her child, only to lose both their lives in the process. As the séance drew to an end and the candles were relit, the room felt different. A weight seemed to have been lifted. Perhaps the spirits, having found a voice through Alara, felt a degree of peace. Ricardo, removing his headphones, looked at the team with eyes wide with amazement. The EVP. The voices. It's undeniable. We've captured something truly extraordinary. Helena nodded, visibly moved. We've heard their voices. We've felt their pain. Their story needs to be honored and remembered. Harrison, once so assured in his disbelief, sat quietly, his mind racing. The events of the evening had shaken his convictions. He looked around the room, the trolley car, the flickering candles, the historic photos, and for the first time, he truly felt the weight of the past and the voices yearning to be heard. With dawn approaching and the séance concluded, the team began to pack up, their bond strengthened by the shared experience. They had come seeking answers, and while they found some, they were left with even more questions. But one thing was certain. The old spaghetti factory held memories and souls that reached out from the past, and the team was now more committed than ever to understanding and honoring them. Chapter 7. Unholy cold. The old spaghetti factory held an ambiance that was inexplicably enchanting during its working hours, the delightful scent of Italian food wafting through the air, and the clinking of cutlery adding a certain rhythm to life. But by night, once the diners left, and the staff retreated, the establishment adopted an altogether different aura, one of palpable tension and age-old secrets. As Helena and her team settled in for another night of investigation, they felt a sudden drop in temperature. The gradual decline in warmth was replaced with a biting cold that seemed to penetrate their very bones. Did someone leave a window open? Harrison inquired, rubbing his arms vigorously. Ricardo, fiddling with his tech equipment, looked up. No windows open, and the HVAC system is off. Plus, this cold is unnatural. Alara, her eyes distant, added, "This isn't just a physical cold. It's an emotional one. These spirits, they're trying to communicate their anguish." Helena, ever the curious historian, began recounting tales from her earlier research. Throughout the decades, several past workers reported feeling sudden, intense cold spots, especially in the kitchen area and by the trolley car. Some believed it to be just drafts or HVAC glitches. But others, They believed they were standing in the very spot where someone from the other side wanted to make their presence felt. As she shared this, a forceful tug on Harrison's jacket stopped him mid-step. He looked around, his eyes searching for the prankster, but none of his teammates were near him. Okay, very funny. Who did that? Helena raised an eyebrow. None of us, Harrison. We're all here. Besides, why would we? Alara, sensing the heightened energy, warned, they're becoming more active. More agitated. We need to proceed with caution. The team ventured to the main dining area. The usually well-arranged tables looked like a whirlwind had hit them. Chairs were toppled, plates were scattered, and silverware lay in patterns that seemed deliberate. Ricardo pointed to a formation. Look at this. The forks and knives, they form a pattern. It's almost like Morse code. As Helena deciphered the pattern, her face went white. It spells, leave. They want us to leave. The revelation sent a shiver down Alara's spine. There's an entity here, stronger and more restless than the others. It's not just trying to communicate. It's trying to dominate. The team decided to set up a makeshift command center, with Ricardo's tech equipment forming the hub. Almost immediately, his monitors began flickering, showing images of parts of the restaurant, then snowy static, then cryptic words, almost as if someone was channeling messages through them. Harrison, despite his earlier skepticism, was becoming a believer. Every tug, every cold spot, every inexplicable event was chipping away at his wall of disbelief. When a cold hand seemingly passed through him, causing him to shiver uncontrollably, he exclaimed, "All right, I get it. You're here. What do you want?" The atmosphere became heavier, making it harder to breathe. Alara, her voice quaking, said, "They're converging on us. We've disturbed something." Suddenly, the lights went out, plunging the restaurant into darkness. The only source of illumination was the soft glow of the tech equipment and the flashlight beams. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by the team's ragged breaths and the distant echoes of footsteps. It felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, before a brilliant light enveloped the room, and the spirit of the lady in white materialized before them. Her face, a mask of sorrow, seemed to plead with them. Alara, gathering her courage, stepped forward. "We're here to help, not harm. We want to understand your story, give you peace." The spirit, her eyes reflecting a profound sadness, pointed towards the trolley car, then faded away. As the lights flickered back on, and the room temperature gradually returned to normal, the team was left in awe, realizing they had come face to face with the heart of the haunting. Helena whispered, "The trolley car. It holds the answers. We need to delve deeper." The team, united in their mission, nodded in agreement, knowing that the night was far from over, and the real revelations were yet to come. Chapter 8. Old scars inside the old spaghetti factory, where the delightful aromas of pasta once reigned supreme during daytime hours. The night now bore witness to a different sort of air. As evening settled in, a silence thick enough to cut through enveloped the restaurant. The team had gathered around a large wooden table, stacks of old documents and photographs surrounding Helena as she sifted through them. The history of this place, it's not just about the restaurant or the trolley. It's older, rooted deeply in Vancouver's past, she mused, adjusting her glasses. Ricardo, adjusting the frequency on his equipment, mentioned, Most places with hauntings have deeper roots than what's immediately apparent. Sometimes it's not about the structure itself, but the land it's built upon. Helena nodded, pulling out an old, yellowed deed from the pile. This is fascinating. Before the establishment of the restaurant, this land was the focal point of major disputes. Various parties fought over its ownership, and it seems. She paused, her fingers tracing the faded ink. It seems there were accusations of foul play. Alara, her face paling, looked up. Last night, I had a dream. It was more of a vision. I saw two men, dressed in old-fashioned attire, arguing vehemently right outside where the trolley stands now. Their voices were raised, filled with rage and desperation. And then, one of them fell, or was pushed, onto the tracks. Harrison, usually the stoic skeptic of the group, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. This is going to sound crazy, especially coming from me, but I had a dream too. I was trapped inside that trolley, pounding on its windows, shouting for help. I could hear the distant sound of a tram approaching. It was terrifying. The room was heavy with the weight of their combined realizations. The pieces of the puzzle were slowly coming together. Breaking the silence, Ricardo played a newly captured EVP. The voice, though faint, was clear in its desperation. Save him. Who's him? The man from Alara's vision? Or someone else? Helena wondered aloud. Determined to find answers, the team geared up for another nighttime investigation. As darkness blanketed the establishment, the group divided into pairs. Helena and Alara decided to delve deeper into the archives stored in the basement, hoping to unearth more about the land's sordid history, while Harrison and Ricardo opted for the main dining area, close to the infamous trolley. Down in the dimly lit basement, amidst shelves of forgotten history, Alara's sensitivity heightened. There's a strong energy here, Helena. It's turbulent. Helena, eyes scanning an old newspaper clipping, whispered, "This might be why." She showed Alara the headline. Man found dead on tracks, foul play suspected. Upstairs, Ricardo's equipment buzzed to life. Cameras were set, and infrared detectors placed strategically. But it was the EVP recorder that captured their attention. Every so often, a voice would break through, sometimes whispering, other times shouting, always filled with anguish. Harrison, usually so grounded, jumped when a cold breeze swept past him. This place. I've never felt anything like it. It's as if the past refuses to rest. The night wore on, and the energies within the restaurant seemed to grow bolder. Shadows flitted across walls, cold spots appeared out of nowhere, and on one occasion, the entire dining setup shook violently. Then, as the early morning hours approached, a chilling event occurred. The trolley's door creaked open, and from it, a translucent figure stepped out. Dressed in attire reminiscent of a bygone era, the apparition looked around, its face etched in sorrow. Ricardo, his hand shaking, pointed his camera, capturing the figure. Alara and Helena, drawn by the commotion, arrived just in time to see the spirit fade away, but not before pointing towards the basement. The team, though shaken, was also invigorated. They had clear evidence, a piece of history both tragic and undeniable. As dawn broke, and the restaurant bathed in the first light of day, they knew their journey was far from over. The spirits of the old spaghetti factory had stories to tell, and Helena, Ricardo, Alara, and even the skeptical Harrison were determined to hear them. Chapter 9. Revelations. The old spaghetti factory had seen countless visitors, diners who came in search of a meal but left with memories. Yet, for the team of paranormal investigators, the memories being uncovered were decades, perhaps even a century old, and each revelation was more astonishing than the last. In the heart of the dining area, where checkered tablecloths and candlelit dinners once prevailed, now sat a circle. Within its confines were Alara, the psychic, and the rest of the team, all united with a singular purpose: to listen. Alara began, her voice a gentle whisper. "Spirits, we are here to understand, to listen, to help. Share with us your stories, your pains, and your desires. Speak to us." A cold wind swept through the room, extinguishing the candles. But as Helena relit them, an ethereal presence made itself felt. Voices, once stifled by the annals of time, began to emerge. There was love and betrayal, a soft, feminine voice murmured. This was quickly followed by a more anguished tone. "I just wanted to protect him. But he was taken from me." Alara, with her eyes shut, channeled the energy, serving as a bridge between the living and the departed. "Tell us who you are. Share with us your story." A heavy silence ensued, and then the narrative began. The voice spoke of a love blossoming between two individuals amidst the hustle and bustle of old Vancouver. A love so pure and genuine that it defied societal norms and boundaries. As the spirit spoke, Helena and Ricardo delved deeper into a chest of old letters they had discovered in the restaurant's attic earlier. The letters, fragile with age, hinted at a romance that flourished despite the odds. A tram conductor, smitten by a woman whose status and standing were far above his. Their secret rendezvous, their exchanged letters, their dreams of a life together, all hidden away from prying eyes. Yet, as is often the case in tales as old as these, tragedy was not far behind. "He was taken from me," the voice wept. "Betrayed by those who couldn't understand our love. And I couldn't save him." Ricardo, a tear escaping his eye, read aloud from one of the letters, "My dearest, each moment spent away from you feels like an eternity. I long for the day we can be together, without the shadows of our society looming over us." The ambiance in the restaurant was thick with sorrow, as the team absorbed the profound weight of the revelations. Alara, channeling the spirit, conveyed its plea: "Remember us. Acknowledge our love, our pain. Do not let our story fade into obscurity." Helena, moved by the spirit's plea, proposed we should hold a memorial service. A tribute not just to the spirits that reside here, but to their stories, their love, their sacrifices. They deserve to be remembered. The idea resonated with the entire team, even Harrison, who had come a long way from his skepticism. "It's the least we can do," he agreed. The next evening, the team gathered again. This time, they were not alone. They had invited a few locals, historians, and even some descendants of employees who had worked at the restaurant over the decades. Together, amidst soft hymns and candlelight, they held a memorial service. Each story was shared, each spirit acknowledged. Tears flowed freely as the tale of the tram conductor and his beloved was recounted. The pain of their separation and the cruelty of their society laid bare. The attendees were united in their sorrow, their empathy, and their respect for the spirits. As the night wore on, and the final notes of a hymn faded into silence, a profound peace descended upon the old spaghetti factory. A peace born out of understanding, acknowledgement, and respect. Alara, sensing the change, whispered, "They're at peace now." Grateful. And as the team packed up, leaving behind the restaurant and its ethereal inhabitants, they did so with heavy hearts but satisfied souls. They had not only unraveled the mysteries of the old spaghetti factory but had also ensured that its spirits and their tales would never be forgotten. Chapter 10. Drawing them out inside the old spaghetti factory, an atmosphere of anticipation pervaded. Dim chandeliers hung overhead, casting a soft ambient glow on the wooden tables below. The windows had been dressed with old lace curtains, and each table was adorned with a single lit candle, its flame flickering in the muted lighting. This night was not for dining or merrymaking. It was an evening to bring together the living and the spectral, to bridge the divide that time had carved between the two. Alara had sent out invites to the local community, encouraging them to come and share their tales about the historic restaurant. Word had spread, and a sizable crowd had gathered, filling the dining area. Murmurs filled the space as locals exchanged notes, their voices a mixture of awe, skepticism, and curiosity. As Helena began documenting the proceedings, Harrison set up a little stage area for the locals to share their stories, and Ricardo made sure all tech equipment was in place to capture any paranormal activity. The first to come forward was an elderly lady, her silver hair pulled back in a tight bun. "I remember, as a child, coming here with my parents," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "Once, I'd lost my doll, only to find it near the trolley. But what was strange was that its hair had been braided, and I swear I saw a little red-haired boy running away, laughing." The crowd listened with rapt attention, some nodding in recognition, others exchanging skeptical glances. A middle-aged man stood up next. "Many years ago, I proposed to my wife in this very restaurant. But what made the evening truly memorable was the sight of a woman, dressed all in white, watching us from afar. There was such sadness in her eyes that my wife and I felt it deep in our hearts. We left an extra chair for her at our wedding. Alara, seated at the center, began to feel an overwhelming energy surrounding her. The air grew colder with each tale, and the ambiance within the restaurant shifted from one of simple reminiscence to something profound and otherworldly. A young woman, her eyes wide with excitement, recounted her encounter with the tram conductor. "It was late, and I was one of the last guests. As I was leaving, I felt someone tap my shoulder. I turned around to see a man in an old conductor's uniform, pointing towards a forgotten purse on my table. Before I could thank him, he vanished." As more stories poured forth, the temperature within the restaurant dropped further, causing visible breaths to emerge from the lips of the gathered audience. The candles on the tables flickered more intensely, as if reacting to the heightened energy in the room. And then it happened. Near the trolley, a soft, luminescent glow began to emanate. It started as a mere shimmer but grew in intensity, capturing the attention of everyone present. Within that radiant aura, figures began to manifest: the playful red-haired boy, the sorrowful lady in white, and the dedicated tram conductor. Their forms were not solid, but there was no mistaking their presence. Ricardo's equipment went haywire, lights flashing and dials spinning uncontrollably. Helena's pen dropped from her hand as she stared, her historian's curiosity overtaking her initial shock. Harrison, for once, was at a loss for words. The spirits didn't speak, but their message was clear. It was one of gratitude and appreciation. For too long, they had been mere whispers, stories that were half forgotten or dismissed. But tonight, they were acknowledged, their tales celebrated, and their existences validated. Alara, her eyes moist with tears, stepped forward, addressing both the living and the departed. Thank you, all of you, for sharing, for listening, and for remembering. Every soul, whether of this realm or the next, deserves to have its story heard. The luminous apparitions, their message delivered, began to fade, but not before the red-haired boy gave one last mischievous grin and the lady in white offered a gracious nod. As the night came to an end and the locals departed, a sense of peace settled over the old spaghetti factory. The team packed their gear, their hearts full and their mission accomplished. They had not only uncovered the haunting tales of the restaurant but had also given its resident spirits a voice, drawing them out from the shadows of the past and into the hearts of the living. Chapter 11. Disturbance. The old spaghetti factory had always stood as a sentinel of the past amidst Vancouver's rapidly evolving landscape. The walls bore stories of yesteryears, with specters weaving between the living. But change was inevitable, even for an establishment as timeless as this. Adjacent to the restaurant, a new construction project had commenced. The sound of machinery reverberated through the walls, the ground shook occasionally, and the air was punctuated with the metallic clangs of progress. It was the birth of a new era, but with it came an unforeseen consequence. Harrison glanced towards Ricardo as the latter's equipment started showing erratic readings. "Rick, are your gadgets malfunctioning again?" Ricardo frowned, adjusting a dial. "No, it's not the equipment. It's the readings. They're off the charts." Helena, who had been reviewing some documents, looked up alarmed. "Ever since that construction started, there's been a change in the air. It's not just the noise and the tremors, it's something deeper." A chill wind suddenly swept through the restaurant, extinguishing the candles. Alara, sensitive to the energies around her, went pale. "They're agitated. The spirits, they're not at peace." The next few hours were chaotic. Tables toppled without apparent reason. Silverware clattered to the ground. The once benign apparitions now made their presence felt more violently. The mischievous red-haired boy's laughter was replaced with cries of distress. The lady in white seemed more desolate, her apparition flitting restlessly around the room. The trolley, which had been their anchor to the restaurant, now became a vortex of frenetic energy. Harrison, trying to be the voice of reason, attempted to rally the group. "We need a plan. We can't let this escalate." Alara nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "We need to communicate with them, assure them. This is their home as much as it's a piece of history for the living." But even as Alara tried to reach out to the spirits psychically, a torrent of emotions hit her. Fear, anger, despair. The psychic connection was overwhelming. She saw flashes of the past, felt the anguish of spirits torn from their restful state. "It's too much," she murmured, collapsing into a nearby chair, beads of sweat forming on her forehead. Ricardo's state-of-the-art equipment started malfunctioning, lights blinking erratically and screens glitching. One device emitted a high-pitched wail before dying completely. "The energies are too chaotic," Ricardo exclaimed, trying unsuccessfully to revive his equipment. "We need to stabilize the environment." Helena, ever the historian, quickly pulled out an old blueprint of the restaurant she'd come across earlier. According to this, there's an old foundation stone beneath the building, a cornerstone. Legends say such stones can be conduits for energies. The group looked at her, realization dawning. We need to reach that stone, Harrison concluded. Maybe, just maybe, it can be used to pacify the spirits. Time was of the essence. The disturbances grew more violent, the ambiance within the restaurant increasingly fraught. Following Helena's lead, the team located a trapdoor leading to a small underground chamber where the foundation stone lay. Alara, regaining some strength, stepped forward. She placed her hands on the stone, her voice resonating through the chamber. Spirits of this place, we implore you to find your peace. The world above might change, but this foundation, this cornerstone, remains your anchor. The atmosphere seemed to thicken, a palpable tension hanging in the air. Moments felt like hours. Then, as suddenly as the disturbances had started, a calm settled. The vibrations from the construction outside faded into the background, no longer a disruptive force. Emerging from below, the team found the restaurant as it should be, quiet, serene. The trolley once again a silent testament to times gone by. We can't control the progress outside, Harrison mused, but maybe we've strengthened the bond between this place and its ethereal inhabitants. Helena nodded in agreement. History is about coexistence, the old with the new. Tonight was a testament to that. Alara, her energy drained but spirit intact, simply said, every soul seeks peace. We just helped them find it amidst the chaos. The old spaghetti factory had once again found its equilibrium. But as the team packed up, ready to leave, they knew that their bond with the restaurant and its spirits had only deepened. They had weathered a storm, ensuring that history and memory remained undisturbed. Chapter 12. Delving deeper in the days following the disturbances, the old spaghetti factory was swathed in an uneasy calm. The spirits, though pacified for now, still projected an aura of unrest. The team had navigated through the storm, but the winds of change were far from over. Helena had plunged herself into a deeper exploration of the restaurant's past, especially focusing on the land it stood upon. Tucked away in the city archives, she stumbled upon documents that predated the establishment of the restaurant. These were narratives of indigenous communities, their customs, and their sacred ceremonies. Gathering the team together, she spread out the old parchments and maps. You won't believe what I've found, she began. This land, where the restaurant stands, was considered sacred by indigenous tribes. It was a meeting place, a ground for ceremonies and rituals. Ricardo, carefully examining one of the maps, realized the implications. If this ground was sacred, then the new construction project. Quote. It's not just about disturbing old memories, Alara interrupted. It's about disturbing sacred rituals, desecrating hallowed grounds. The spirit's reaction the other night makes sense now. Harrison, once the skeptic but now very much a believer, felt the weight of the revelation. We have to do something. We can't let the construction continue. Not if it means the desecration of sacred grounds. Determined to make a stand, the team drafted a petition, detailing the significance of the land and the importance of preserving its sanctity. Harrison took the lead, rallying locals and patrons of the restaurant to lend their voices to the cause. Word spread, and soon the community was abuzz with the revelations. But change is never without resistance. The construction company, with stakes running high, was not about to halt their project without a fight. They deployed their own historians to challenge Helena's findings and PR professionals to shift public opinion. The local media caught wind of the escalating situation. The old spaghetti factory's paranormal investigations had been intriguing, but this was a clash of tradition versus progress. Headlines flashed with debates on whether honoring the past should stand in the way of future developments. The team was not without its challenges either. While many locals supported them, there were skeptics who ridiculed their claims, dismissing the stories of spirits and sacred grounds as mere folklore and superstition. Alara felt the tug of both worlds. The spiritual realm was agitated, with spirits conveying their desperation and pleading for the protection of their resting place. In the world of the living, she faced skepticism and even hostility from those who saw the team's efforts as an obstruction to progress. As the days went by, the tensions mounted. Protests and counter-protests sprang up. The once tranquil old spaghetti factory became the epicenter of a cultural and spiritual storm. Ricardo's equipment, constantly active now, captured a whirlwind of paranormal activity, from unexplained apparitions to heart-rending EVPs. One evening, as another protest raged outside, the team gathered inside the restaurant. Helena, with a new document in hand, exclaimed, "This might be the evidence we need." It's a treaty, one that explicitly acknowledges the sacred nature of this land. The document was a game changer. Legal experts advised that, if verified, this treaty could pose significant challenges to the construction project. Harrison, with newfound determination, stated, "We're not just fighting for the spirits now. We're fighting for history, for respect, and for the rights of those who came before us." As the battle lines were drawn, the team realized the importance of their mission. It was no longer just about understanding the past. It was about preserving it. The spirits of the old spaghetti factory, the red-haired boy, the lady in white, the tram conductor, and countless others unseen, had found their champions. The fight for their sanctuary had truly begun. Chapter 13. The final night, the sun had dipped beneath the horizon, and a soft, silvery veil of moonlight draped over the old spaghetti factory. Inside, the ambient glow of candles set a serene atmosphere, contrasting the turmoil of the past few days. This was to be the team's last night, and they felt a sense of urgency to forge a deeper connection with the spirits, to hear their tales, and to provide them some measure of peace. Alara sat at the head of a large, wooden table, surrounded by the others. The candle's flames danced in her eyes as she began the preparations for the séance. "We're here to listen," she whispered, her voice carrying the weight of her responsibility as the bridge between the living and the departed. Ricardo's tech gear, sophisticated as it was, remained silent and passive, serving only as observers this time. Helena had a small journal at her side, ready to document any stories shared. Harrison, having come full circle from skeptic to believer, took a deep breath, feeling both anticipation and trepidation. As Alara began to chant, a profound stillness settled. The distant hum of the city outside faded, and the room felt suspended in time. Slowly, one by one, voices from the past began to emerge. These weren't just disembodied words captured by electronics. These were heartfelt narratives, stories of lives lived, loves lost, and fates met too soon. A gentle, maternal voice came forth, filling the room with warmth. "I once danced here, long before the walls of this restaurant stood. It was a celebration of love and unity. Helena jotted down the words, capturing the essence of a time when the land was a place of joy and gathering. As the hours passed, more spirits joined the chorus, and the room was thick with emotion. Some shared tales of happiness, while others recounted tragedies and heartaches. The team, entranced, listened intently, feeling the weight of each soul's story. Suddenly, the temperature dropped sharply. The lady in white and the red-haired boy, the two most prominent spirits the team had encountered, made their appearance. The pair stood by the iconic trolley, their forms more tangible than ever before. The boy, his innocent eyes shining with mischief, took the lady's hand, and for a moment, the team could see the bond between them, possibly a mother and son relationship, forever immortalized in the spectral realm. Alara, her voice trembling with emotion, spoke to them directly. "Why are you tied to this place? What message do you wish to convey?" The lady in white, her voice a soft, sorrowful whisper, replied, "This was our sanctuary. It's where our stories intersected, where our lives were forever changed. But we are not bound by sorrow. We stay to remind others of the importance of memories." The boy, his voice playful yet sincere, added, "And we wanted to show you something." Led by the ethereal duo, the team ventured towards a secluded corner of the restaurant. Behind an old wooden panel, which Helena and Ricardo managed to pry open, they discovered a time-forgotten alcove. Inside was a small, dust-covered box. Helena gently opened the box to reveal a collection of trinkets, a delicate lace handkerchief, old coins, a miniature train, mementos from different eras, each one holding a piece of the story of the old spaghetti factory and its spectral inhabitants. Harrison, holding the miniature train, felt an overwhelming rush of emotions, sorrow, happiness, longing, and hope, all blending into a symphony of the past. As dawn approached, the spirits began to retreat. The lady in white, with the red-haired boy by her side, approached the team one last time. "Remember us," she whispered. "Remember our stories." Alara nodded, tears streaming down her face. "We promise. Your stories will live on." As the first rays of the sun pierced the horizon, the old spaghetti factory stood silent and majestic, a testament to the stories it held within its walls. The team, forever changed by their experiences, left with a renewed purpose to ensure that these tales, and the spirits who shared them, would never be forgotten. Chapter 14. Discovery. The day following the profound encounter with the spirits, the team decided to delve deeper into the secrets concealed within the walls of the old spaghetti factory. A new day, a fresh start, with the promise of untold stories beckoning them forward. Helena had been intrigued by a worn-out blueprint of the restaurant she'd found amongst her research papers. One area, marked cryptically as "For Tomorrow," caught her attention. This part of the restaurant wasn't accessible to the public, buried behind renovations and modernizations. She believed it might be hiding something of immense value to their investigation. With the permission of the restaurant's manager, the team ventured to the specified area. Pushing away layers of cobwebs and dust, they unearthed a heavy metallic box. Intricate designs adorned its exterior, a combination of ornate motifs and simple engravings of what appeared to be children playing near a tram. Helena delicately pried it open, revealing a treasure trove of memories. It was a time capsule. The items inside were preserved surprisingly well. There were letters tied with ribbons, worn-out toys indicative of a bygone era, and other personal belongings, each silently echoing the stories of its owners. The connection to the spirits was palpable, with every item possibly having belonged to one of the souls they had encountered. Ricardo, ever curious about personal narratives, reached for a bundle of letters. The handwriting was elegant, and the paper was yellowed with age. Each letter encapsulated a memory, a dream, or a hope. One, in particular, penned by a mother to her child, spoke of her wish for a brighter future, her dreams for her son, and her hope that he'd always remember their time together. It wasn't hard to imagine the red-haired boy clutching this letter, treasuring his mother's words. Near the letters, Alara found a small toy tram, intricately detailed. Holding it brought forth a rush of emotions, further solidifying the team's connection to the spirits. As Helena carefully went through each item, she made a note, attempting to link them to the spirits' tales they'd uncovered. A silver brooch, tarnished with time, depicted a dancing woman, possibly a connection to the lady in white, or even an earlier spirit who danced on the land. A pocket watch, forever frozen at midnight, hinted at the moment of a tragic accident or perhaps the time when a heartfelt promise was made. The depth of the history and the intense personal stories inspired an idea. "We should create a memorial," Harrison voiced the thought that had been forming in everyone's minds. A space where these items, these stories, can be shared and celebrated. Where the spirits can be honored. Helena nodded, a corner dedicated to the past, right here in the restaurant. It's the least we can do to ensure that their memories live on. Ricardo, capturing the contents of the time capsule with his camera, added, "With the stories we've uncovered, along with these mementos, visitors can truly feel connected to the history of this place." Approaching the local community with the idea, the team was met with overwhelming support. The tales of the spirits had touched many, and the locals were eager to pay their respects and ensure the stories weren't forgotten. The restaurant's management, realizing the depth of their establishment's history and the potential to offer visitors an enriched experience, readily agreed to the memorial corner. Work began almost immediately. A cozy corner of the restaurant was cordoned off, with wooden panels and glass cases installed to display the items. Helena painstakingly curated each exhibit, weaving the tales they'd uncovered with the tangible memories from the time capsule. Alara, with her connection to the spirits, ensured that the setup resonated with peace and reverence. On the day of the inauguration, locals thronged the restaurant. As they walked through the memorial, many felt a deep connection, a bridge to the past. Stories were shared, tears were shed, and the restaurant buzzed with a mixture of somber reflection and heartfelt appreciation. That evening, as the team sat together, they felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Not only had they connected with the spirits, but they'd also fostered a deeper connection within the community to its history. As the night deepened, they could sense the spirits around them, more at peace than before. The lady in white, the red-haired boy, and even the elusive tram conductor seemed to bask in the warmth of being remembered and cherished. The old spaghetti factory, with its rich tapestry of tales, had truly come alive, bearing testament to the stories of yesteryears. Chapter 15. Departures and Legacies. The days following the inauguration of the Memorial Corner saw a significant transformation in the old spaghetti factory. The establishment that had once buzzed with unseen energies and inexplicable disturbances now resonated with a calm and peaceful aura. The spirits, who had long wandered its corridors and spaces, seeking acknowledgement and understanding, now seemed to be in harmony with their surroundings. Their tales had been shared, their memories cherished, and their presence recognized and respected. Every morning, when the restaurant staff began their preparations for the day, they would light a candle in the memorial corner, a symbol of the bridging between past and present. Patrons who had heard of the paranormal team's experiences and the subsequent establishment of the memorial space flocked to the restaurant, not for the thrill of a ghostly encounter, but to immerse themselves in the rich tapestry of stories and emotions that the old spaghetti factory now embodied. Helena, often lost in her world of historical texts and archival documents, was contemplative. "I've dealt with history on paper, in theories, and through tales," she mused one evening, as the team sat together for one of their last meals in the restaurant. "But this was history coming alive, reaching out to us." Harrison, taking a sip of his wine, nodded in agreement. The spirits here weren't just echoes of the past. They had stories that needed to be told, feelings that needed an outlet. It's been a surreal journey. Alara, her intuitive abilities having played a crucial role in the team's communications with the spirits, added, "The essence of this place, these spirits, isn't just about the past. It's a lesson for the present, to recognize, respect, and remember. So many places have histories that go unnoticed and unrecognized. But now, the old spaghetti factory stands as an example of what can happen when we truly connect with the past." Ricardo, who'd come to the investigation as the most skeptical of them all, looked around, his gaze lingering on the candle flickering in the memorial corner. "I entered this investigation with doubt," he admitted, a touch of sheepishness in his voice, "but what I leave with is a profound belief. Not just in the spirits we encountered, but in the power of stories, memories, and the imprints they leave behind." Their investigation had indeed been transformative, not just for the restaurant and its spirits, but for each member of the team. The layers of skepticism, apprehension, and uncertainty had peeled away, replaced by respect, understanding, and belief. As their final day dawned, the team packed their equipment, memories, and experiences, ready to move on to their next location. But as they left, they carried with them the legacy of the old spaghetti factory, a legacy of memories, of honoring the past, and of the powerful connections that can be formed when stories are shared and spirits are acknowledged. The restaurant, with its newfound prominence, continued to see a steady influx of patrons. The stories of the spirits and of the paranormal team's experiences drew many. But more than the tales of ghostly encounters, it was the atmosphere of reverence, understanding, and respect that patrons truly came to experience. The old spaghetti factory had become more than just a dining establishment. It was a space where the past was honored, memories were celebrated, and stories were shared and cherished. And so, as the years rolled on, amidst the bustling city's landscape, the old spaghetti factory stood tall and proud. It wasn't just a testament to good food and dining experiences, but a beacon that illuminated the importance of remembering, acknowledging, and honoring the past. The spirits, once restless and seeking, now watched over the establishment with benevolence and gratitude, their tales forever intertwined with the legacy of the old spaghetti factory. We hope you have enjoyed our paranormal scary story about the old spaghetti factory in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Please visit us at Paranormal Untold Stories. Come to listen to more of our scary stories collection. Paranormal Untold Stories encourages you to contact us if you have your own untold story that you would like our professionals team to put online as a scary story. Thank you. Please follow our YouTube channel, Paranormal, Untold Stories, and encourage others to do the same. Paranormal, Untold Stories.